All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30, and I'd like to call to order the City of Richmond Planning Commission for November 16th. If we can have a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Chair Tucker,
Present.
Vice Chair Harrison. Here. Secretary Brubaker.
Here.
Commissioner Loy is absent, as well as Commissioner Agarwal, Commissioner He,
Here.
and we have a quorum with 3 commissioners.
Thank you. And if we can also announce who from staff is with us this evening, support.
Yes, sir. It's myself, Hector Rojas, Planning Manager, and we also have Community Development Director Lena Velasco. I believe online we have City Attorney James Atencio.
Excellent, thank you. As we jump into this, I know that we have minutes to approve from October 5th. However, I was not here on October 5th, and so let's see, I guess Vice Chair Harrison, you led the meeting that evening, so if you could move on that item, please.
Okay, do we have any need or edits to the minutes as submitted?
I don't.
There's actually only 2 of us here that were. All right. Well, you want to move it?
Okay, I'll move that to approve the minutes
And
from
I'll
last
second that. And if there's no discussion, I guess
Yeah, no, yeah.
2 in favor and 2 abstain?
So,
Oh, they can vote? Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
so it's been moved in second, and then, yeah, so we can have a roll call on it, because, and I'll just start, because I'll be the first one. I'm going to abstain since I was not here that evening.
Okay, and moving ahead with Vice Chair Harrison,
Yes.
Secretary Brubaker,
Yes.
and Commissioner He.
Yes.
Great, motion carries.
All right. Now we'll move on to the next item. Well, actually, you want to take things kind of, so we don't really have anything on consent this evening, which is, yeah, nothing on consent. So now we'll move to the Brown Act Public Forum. And this is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to address the Planning Commission on a topic that is not already on the agenda and is relevant to the commission's purpose may submit a speaker's form and/or raise their hand for those who are online this evening. And then speakers will have up to 3 minutes to make comments, and again, on an item that is not on the agenda. And so I see no one in the audience that is filling out a form. Do we have anyone in the virtual realm raising a hand? Sounds good. All right, if I can get a motion to close the public forum.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and second to close public forum. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on to new items on the agenda. Item number 1, PLN 23-206, the Chevron Modernization Project Annual Compliance Report is being held over to the new year for January 18, 2024. So there is no discussion on that. So if anyone was here to hear that report, you are in luck. You can come back. And we will see you in January. So let's move on to the second item, which is PLN 23-344, Hilltop Horizon Specific Plan. And tonight is really a study session to present and receive Planning Commission comments on initial concepts, alternatives for the Hilltop Horizon Specific Plan area. We will hear a report from the staff and regarding the purpose of the report. I'm not going to keep going into the HHSP, will be to guide development of approximately 143-acre site that consists of the Hilltop Regional Shopping Mall and areas immediately surrounding it to the south and east. The planned areas within the Hilltop Priority Development and is generally situated south of Richmond Parkway between San Pablo Avenue and Interstate 80. And again, tonight we will hear a report from the staff. I know we have members of the applicant here who will also provide some comments. And really, again, it's for the commission to listen and then generate your questions and comments to provide feedback for staff to take and continue to evaluate the proposal. So,
Chair
Yes.
Tucker, if I may, I believe I will recuse myself from the discussion of this item because my employer has potential design work for property on site. So,
oh, yeah, we do. So, yeah, thank you, Commissioner He. And that was on the advice of City Attorney regarding the recusal. And we still have, because we are a seated commission, we still have a quorum of 3. So we are good. Yeah, since we only have 5, so 3 makes up the majority. And so we'll allow Commissioner He time to, actually, before he leaves, for those who do not know, for the audience in the room as well as those online, Commissioner He was just appointed to the commission. And so we want to welcome him to this body. And if you would like just to give a brief background and your interest in being on the commission.
yeah, hi. I'm Aaron He, and I was just appointed to board last week. And it's a pleasure to serve the city and the residents of Richmond. And I come from a design background and also has a degree in engineering. And I look forward to all of the meaningful discussions that we have here in the next couple years. Thank you.
Thank you for your interest in serving, and we look forward to seeing you at the next commission meeting.
Thanks. Good.
All right, we'll allow him some opportunity to leave. All right. Okay, so as Commissioner He is exiting the building, we will now turn this over to staff to kick off the study session for, again, PLN 23-206. No, let me flip my page. PLN 23-344, the Hilltop Horizon Specific Plan. Thank you.
Yes, and good evening, Chair Tucker, Planning Commissioners, and members of the public that are joining us here and online. My name is Hector Rojas. I'm the Planning Manager for the city's Community Development Department. I'm also lucky to be the Project Manager for this planning initiative, which is looking to shape the near and long-term future of the former mall and surrounding areas. Tonight is a major milestone for the city's planning process. We kicked off the Hilltop Horizon Specific Plan in 2021. And since then, we've engaged the community and other stakeholders to identify a wide range of hopes and aspirations for this key opportunity area. The purpose of this study session is to further familiarize you with the specific plan work, summarize the community and stakeholder input that we've received so far, and to present and receive your comments on some of the initial land use concepts that we've developed based on that public outreach. What's important for the commission to keep in mind is that the city is not asking the commission to recommend or select a specific land use concept at this point in time. The target outcome for tonight's meeting is to receive feedback on what you might like or dislike from each of the land use concepts that we present. On December 5th, we will be asking the same kind of feedback from the City Council, and based on the collective input, the specific plan team will develop a proposed land use vision for the plan area. The proposed land use vision will then be brought back to the Commission and the City Council for confirmation, and then the specific plan team would begin drafting the specific plan document and conducting the appropriate level of environmental review. There's some important context that the Commission should keep in mind as it considers the initial land use concepts that will be presented tonight. Although the COVID-19 pandemic has ended, it's had lasting implications for urban planning everywhere around the world. Hybrid work appears to be here to stay. We're eating more takeout. Movie theaters and concerts haven't fully come back yet, and we're spending more, but that spending isn't actually happening a lot in malls anymore. All this means that we need to temper our expectations of what types of land uses can be realized in the plan area in the near, mid, and long term. The city's housing element recently got adopted and should also be kept in mind as we consider balancing land uses for the area. For the current element cycle, covering 2023 to 2031, the city must target production of just over 3,600 units. 42% of this allocation is for above moderate income housing, but 25% is allocated for extremely low and very low income households. So affordable housing is going to be really key, a consideration for all the opportunity areas like Hilltop. The existing general plan's vision for the Hilltop area should also be kept in mind. The existing general plan designates the Hilltop area as a future activity center intended to be pedestrian and transit-friendly community hubs characterized by mixed use and higher intensity development capable of generating revenue, creating jobs, while providing services and amenities to residents, businesses, and visitors. Most of the grant funding for the specific plan is also tied to realizing similar objectives, so deviations in areas like density and intensity of development will need to be looked at very carefully. Another thing to keep in mind is that the mall site only accounts for 55% of the plan area. While we welcome all of the comments on the mall site, we also encourage you to remember that the plan area is larger and your comments should extend to those areas as well. Some final context to consider is the change in the mall site's ownership. Prologis did purchase the mall site in 2020, and their initial plans showed various arrangements of predominantly employment industrial uses as well as some retail and housing. Most recently, Prologis partnered with Signature Development Group to prepare a more refined concept alternatives for the mall site that better aligned with the feedback received during the city's specific plan process and their own separate community outreach efforts. These mall landowner concept alternatives will be presented together tonight with the city's driven alternatives. And again, it's important to know that we're not pushing any one alternative and are instead looking for you to provide insight as to which elements of each concept resonate with you the most. One point of clarification that I would make, Chair Tucker, is that the applicant on this project is the City of Richmond. Prologis and Signature Development is a key stakeholder as part of this project. So moving right along here, you see on this slide a set of different headlines that indicate that malls all around the nation are changing. They're becoming less and less popular, and a lot of malls here in the region have taken on a different approach of looking at lifestyle design and providing boutique, pedestrian-oriented, outdoor-facing formats. And this is obviously true with Hilltop Mall. It is mostly defunct now with a major anchor tenant remaining being Walmart. So this presents a major opportunity with the surrounding field of parking for a large area to be redeveloped in this neighborhood and really catalyze future development in the surrounding areas. So with that in mind, this project is really re-envisioning of a 143-acre site in the Hilltop area. What you see on this site plan is essentially the boundaries for the planning area in red. Again, it's the Hilltop Mall site, which encompasses about 55% of the plan area, but there's also areas to the south of Hilltop Mall Road and further east on Garrity Way. Really, the purpose of this planning project is to promote the transformation of this plan area from a low-intensity, auto-oriented retail center to a higher mixed-use destination. I'm going to be passing it over to our project team here in a moment to walk you through all the work that's been made to date on the project, as well as summarize key feedback that we've heard from all the stakeholders and community thus far. Just know that our project team has a deep bench of a lot of multidisciplinary team members here, with ESA as the main firm that is leading this project. Site Lab is doing urban design. We also have an economist on board to look at the market realities for the region and this area in particular, and other folks that are not with us tonight that are also part of the team, including Fair and Peers, NCE, and A3GEO. So with that, I'd like to invite Bev Choi from ESA to take over the presentation and walk you through the specific plan and the feedback that we're looking to get from you tonight. Bev?
Great. Thank you so much, Hector. Can everyone hear me all right? All right. I think I'm
Yes.
seeing some nods. Uh, Again, thank you, Hector. Good evening, Chair, Planning Commissioners, and members of the community. As Hector mentioned, I'm Bev Choi with ESA. Really pleased to be here virtually and ultimately, just help support this really exciting project. As Hector mentioned, I'll be walking us through the rest of tonight's presentation. You'll also be hearing from our teaming partner, Woody Hansen from Site Lab. We have Stephanie Hagar from BAE, who is here for Q&A later on in the presentation if needed. With this slide, want to share just what those meeting objectives are. And first is really to provide an overview of how the concept plans have progressed and evolved over the planning process. And then secondly, as Hector had mentioned, to gain your feedback on key land use, key plan components to help the team put some shape to this preferred land use vision. Next, please. Today's presentation will provide a recap of the project, and we'll also be spending a majority of our time on the concept alternatives and how they have progressed over time and the feedback that we've received through the public outreach efforts. We're going to wrap up with next steps and followed by your input on the study session questions. Next, please. We're going to briefly go over some project background in this section. In this schedule overview slide, as you can see in the timeline, we kicked off the project in 2022, and we're at the end of this phase 2 scenario planning. And once the preferred plan is in place in the next phase of work, our team will be initiating a set of studies and analyses that is going to help support the specific plan and environmental document, both of which we anticipate making significant progress in 2024. Next. To date, our team has prepared a number of existing conditions reports, including a market study, which really helped to frame our team's understanding of some of those project opportunities and challenges. We then coupled that understanding with what we heard through a series of outreach events. And you can see over to the right in the blue box, some of those statistical summaries of the groups that we had reached out to and kind of number of participants. Additionally, city staff had participated in several neighborhood council meetings to provide project updates, and the city team has also held many focus meetings with landowners, specifically the mall landowner, as Hector mentioned, owns a little bit more than half of the property within the planned area. Next, please. This list presented here are really those main themes that have bubbled up from our analyses, as well as what we heard come through in those outreach and engagement activities. As you can see on the slide, there was a really strong emphasis on attracting new businesses, having more entertainment opportunities, more housing, having land uses that stimulate the economy and plan area, having a mixed use project, promoting safety and job opportunities were key, creating a resilient community and enhancing mobility for all users. And with that context, I'm going to pass it over to Woody Hansen from Site Lab, who is going to walk us through the concept plan progression and where the alternatives are today. And I do want to iterate that these plans are not final and asking for the commission's input on these key land use components. Woody, do you want to take it away?
Great. Thanks, Bev. So, and thank you, Hector, for the sort of intro. Building from the key main themes that Bev was just talking about, this whole team sought to develop some framework plan alternatives that could accommodate both the feedback we've been hearing along the way from stakeholders and those main themes that were coming to the surface. And so we started by developing a few goals to highlight those main themes and really focus on what we hope is eventually the experience in the plan. I'm seeing myself instead. There we go. So first is that we want to make sure that this is, and what we've heard is people want a growing neighborhood and a destination. And so that means both a combination of creating new entertainment opportunities, but also making sure we have a mix of land uses as well as new land uses that don't exist on the site today, as well as new businesses. The next is that we want to make sure we make space for, on the next slide, new neighbors, new businesses, and new visitors to come to the site that aren't going there already. And so what that means is attracting new businesses, creating more housing choice for people to imagine living at the Hilltop site, and also promoting employment opportunities. And finally, on the next slide, we want to make sure that we're developing spaces for belonging, for connecting, and for sharing. And so that means these spaces need to feel safe, which was a core element of what we heard, that the mobility connections are clear and intuitive, and that there's an emphasis on sustainability, resilience, and equity within the planning framework. So on the next slide, most people are aware, and Hector and Bev mentioned that Prologis bought the mall site in 2020. The mall site itself makes up about 55% of the total plan area. And early discussions with Prologis really focused around the opportunity that they saw here for employment and industrial uses. So the initial plans really showed a large proportion of the site being large format buildings with a horizontal orientation. There was also a mid-rise residential component to the plan near where the existing residential uses are on the west side. Around the same time, on the next slide, the city team was developing some alternative framework plans, which were based on those planning drivers and goals that I just walked through and Bev walked through before me. These plans are really trying to do it all, honestly. We heard a lot of things that people wanted to see here. And so we were consistently trying to apply principles of a mix of uses, walkability, and open space variety across each of the schemes, arranging them in different ways. In each, we included a mixed-use residential Main Street, which was a specific ask that we heard through stakeholder engagement, as well as providing larger format retail opportunities. What you'll note in these plans is one, that this is not just the mall site, but the larger 143-acre site that we're discussing here, but also that you'll note that the Walmart in these scenarios has been relocated. It sounds as though conversations since that time with Walmart have suggested they're not interested in relocation at this time. And so that's just something to keep in mind as we're walking through these city alternative plans. So on the next slide, the plans evolved again as we were further sort of having the conversation with the primary landowner. And really this conversation specifically around the employment uses on the site, the nature of them and the location of them. And so these two plans are really showing alternatives around the types of employment uses which could be located here, whether they be more industrial in focus or more mixed use in character. And on the next slide, since that time, fast forwarding a little bit, the primary landowner has brought on a development partner that has developed residential properties throughout the Bay Area. And so now the plans have started to evolve further, and the refined version is both thinking about near-term feasibility and also accommodating a lot more of that community and stakeholder input that we heard. And so the conversations between the city-led process and the developer-led process have definitely become more synchronized in the direction of the plans, and those conversations have been very productive, both in considering the arrangement of the land uses and the feasibility of development on this site. And in particular, on the next slide, the consistencies that we've seen at this point that we want to make sure are moving forward in any scenario is that there's a clear mix of land uses that offers this opportunity for new business and residents to thrive, that there's a clear housing component that makes up the majority of the site, that there's a retail element to the site as well, that the parks and open space are supportive of the needs in the surrounding community and the new community to come, and that there's enhanced connectivity and walkability in all cases. And so I'll pass it back to Bev to talk further about the development timeline.
Great, thanks so much, Woody. During the last two recent outreach meetings that the team had, included a advisory committee meeting as well as community workshop. And in those meetings, our team had asked several polling questions. And this first one here asks, how quickly do you want to see change in the Hilltop Horizon Plan area? And so this will serve as study session question number 1. And you can see in the takeaways that a majority of the respondents and the constituents wanted to see change in the near term within that 0 to 5 year time frame. In some cases, for example, in workshop number 2, 100% of the respondents, when we took that poll, were in favor of seeing something happen in the near term. So want to emphasize these results as we continue to talk about these uses and the potential for timing of the development. Next slide. As you saw in the material that Woody covered, there are variations in the land uses and how they're arranged, and aspects like open space, safety, mobility, among some of those other themes that we heard earlier are really important to the project and those that will continue to move forward. But for this next segment, really want to dial in on these 3 specific uses: employment, retail, and housing. And so in the following slides, I'll provide an overview of each of the use, the potential timing of development for certain uses, the polling question that we asked associated with the use, as well as feedback we received. And these polling questions were really developed with the intent to build off of the feedback we heard in past outreach events. And with this slide shown here, these are the employment and industrial uses that have come up in past outreach conversations, and including the conversations that we have had with the mall landowners. I'll generally provide a description of some of these uses and want to add that industrial development has been really evolving to respond to a variety of environmental and health concerns. It can really look different from project to project. So with this first one, mixed use office, these are typically in amenity rich mixed use locations that can really draw and retain employees. As you move over to the right, a healthcare kind of life science type uses. These are in typically larger complexes found in clusters of buildings that can be adjacent to facilities that really complement their use. And these can be offices, it could be manufacturing. Moving over, still research and development. These are spaces that can be tied to innovation. So you see a lot of flexibility and adaptability in how they design their spaces. Data centers, these are buildings that house a lot of servers and equipment. So these can be, either vertically stacked or horizontally oriented. Moving over to the bottom images, advanced manufacturing. These facilities typically use, innovative technologies for product making, and these companies can be involved in robotics, automation, things of that nature. And then warehousing and storage distribution. And these uses are typically located near highways for timely goods distribution. And in newer projects, we have seen these can be energy efficient and state-of-the-art facilities with streamlined operations. And at the bottom of the slide, you can see this timeline for potential development. And through the market study, our teaming partner, BAE, prepared, we saw that there was a near-term potential to see research and development, industrial flex spaces, and warehousing and distribution that can occur within that 0 to 5 year time frame. As Hector noted in the beginning of the presentation, e-commerce has really kicked off from the pandemic and other factors. And further out in the kind of middle term, there could be potential for smaller scale, a mixed use office if it's supported by housing in the plan area, and for the 15-year outlook, maybe speculative office. Next, please. So we asked participants in the last 2 outreach meetings which employment use would be the least desirable in the planned area. And they have the choices shown here that I had described in the previous slide. In the outreach conducted, there really seemed to be a split. Some did not want to see industrial, others were open to it. In the survey, 44% were opposed due to concerns with traffic, air quality, other nuisances, and others were open to R&D and data centers. And in the recent outreach meetings, we heard there was the most opposition to warehouse, distribution, and logistics, and general acceptance for uses like R&D, biotech, healthcare, and mixed-use development. And I will note that more than half of the planned area is currently zoned as commercial mixed-use activity center, which is the city's most intensive mixed-use designation. And this zone does not allow for limited industrial. However, manufacturing and R&D can already occur right now through a conditional use permit or with some limitations. Next, please. Presented here are a couple of retail typologies. The first is Main Street type retail, and these are smaller scale retail development catered towards pedestrians and what is typically a very walkable environment. And because of its scale, it can feel a bit more intimate. In the middle column, there is larger floor plate retail. These are what you typically call your big box retailers like Costco and Target. And depending on your setting, these can really be built and look a few different ways as shown in the images here. And then the last column combines both the small and the large retailers into one development. And something that we've heard a couple of times in the outreach meetings have been the reference to the Bay Street area in Emeryville and people really resonating with that type of development. Next, please. So for tonight's study session question number 3 is what style of new retail development is most desirable for the Hilltop Plan area? As you can see over to the right, we heard in the survey, there's a really strong desire for restaurants and cafes, but there's a need for a grocery store. Survey respondents wanted both retail spaces for independently owned small businesses as well as the big boxes. And in the recent outreach meetings conducted, there was also general acceptance for both, with a preference towards having a walkable retail destination. An acknowledgement too that these two different scales of retail could really play off each other and benefit each other mutually and financially. Next, please. For our last main use, we want to spend some time talking about housing and understanding what the Commission wants to see in terms of the housing needed, as well as those that are desirable in the plan area. On this slide are a couple of examples of housing at different densities, and I'll start to describe those on the top. 10 units per acre, those are typically your detached 2-story townhomes. 20 to 22 units per acre. These can be your 2 to 3-story attached townhomes. Moving over to the bottom, the 40 to 60 dwelling units per acre. These can be 3 to 4 stories residential above some sort of ground floor use, not necessarily retail, but could be. When you get to 70, 90 plus units per acre, you really start to see the buildings get taller, denser, really maximizing development on the parcel. And these projects are typically most successful when integrated with other supporting uses where there are a lot of amenities to offer. And regarding the potential timing of development, for the near term, there is a demand for sale housing in Richmond when developed with amenities, and there is a perception of safety. In the medium term, there could be the possibility for multifamily rental. And in the long term, the potential to see higher density housing, and really those that are 40 units per acre plus. Next, please. For the housing questions, we're splitting this into two parts. We're going to first focus on the area zoned CM5, which is the mall site and some of those parcels to the south shown in purple on the key map. The current allowable residential density at the mall site and those parcels to the south is 40 units per acre, which is the minimum, up to 135 dwelling units per acre. And so for study question 4A is, would you support a reduction to the density minimum, so dropping it below 40 units per acre at the mall site, the CM5 zone, and the Hilltop Plan area in order to spur residential development and other types of development in the plan area? Going over to the right for the takeaways, we saw that 63% favored a reduction from the advisory committee. The committee was generally supportive of having a mix of housing at various densities. For the community workshop, 43% favored a reduction, and general support for having a mixed density approach. And there was also some desire to see residential consistent with existing neighboring developments, such as those across the street over at Summer Lane. Next slide, please. So we'll switch over to the commercial regional or CR zone, which is shown in red in the key map. The current allowable density here is up to 50 dwelling units per acre. So this is the maximum currently. And the study question here is, would you support an increase to this density maximum at the remaining parcels in the Hilltop Plan area in order to spur residential development and other types of development in the plan area? And when we asked this question at the advisory committee meeting, 67% favored an increase. There was also general support for having higher density housing, provided that there really is those community amenities supporting the project, and really those amenities that can enhance quality of life. 50% of respondents at the community workshop favored an increase, and again, supportive of a mixed density approach. And in both cases, for the entire plan area, what we heard through the survey was there was really high emphasis placed on the need to have affordable housing, for sale housing, and multifamily housing. Next, please. All right, next steps. As Hector mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we're going to be taking this slide deck and a summary of your input and sharing it with City Council on December 12th in a study session with Council. With Council's direction, we hope to have a preferred land use plan by early 2024 so that the team can initiate a series of studies that would support the preparation of a specific plan and environmental document. And if you go to the next slide, Hector, this is a recap of the 4 study questions. The 4th question does have 2 parts, but this is what we're hoping to get input from the Planning Commission this evening. And really appreciate your time and open to your questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Let's see, I don't know, staff, you have anything you want to add to the presentation?
No, I think at this time we're willing to accept any questions from the commission. And again, we're looking for your feedback on these concepts, and also for the public that's joining us online to offer their input.
Okay. How would we do this? Who actually do we have in the virtual world?
Chair Tucker, it looks like we have maybe about 10 or 15 attendees, and right now we only have one hand up. So there's a couple ways we can do it, is we can take it by topic and go to each commissioner to provide feedback, and then, or we could take the public comments first on those topic areas and then go to the commission.
I think traditionally we usually let the public weigh in first. So let's do that.
Okay. Sorry, I should have moved chairs.
If possible, can you put that list of the 4 or 5 topics you want us to deal with? Can they possibly put that back up on the screen or put it somewhere we can refresh our memories about it?
Yeah, Hector, are the questions up on the screen? Okay.
If we could have KCRT switch over to the screen.
Okay, perfect. And do you know how to do the timer? Yeah. Okay.
All right, so thank you for your patience here. I'm going to go over to the public comment. For those of you that are interested in providing public comment online, please use the raise hand feature. I do see 2 members of the public that have raised their hands, so we're going to go over to Corey Riley first. And Mr. Riley, you'll have 3 minutes to add your comments.
Good evening. I guess I can't turn my video on. My name is Corey Riley. I want to thank you all for continuing to use hybrid meetings. It does make attending meetings easier, and so I appreciate that. Just to let you know, I am on the technical advisory committee for this project, and so I think that the consultants and staff have probably already heard a lot of kind of what I have to say. I am a neighbor of this development. I live in Hilltop Green. You can see my rooftop on most of the aerials that they use when they're showing this project. I was also involved in the development of the general plan when the city was doing that, both in my roles at the Neighborhood House of North Richmond and then a little bit later when I was working at the Public Health Department. It was a long general plan process. And so I was, around and involved when the city was coming up with the vision for Hilltop. And I think that the community had a really good vision for Hilltop. And I think that we should be taking changes, especially when we're considering lowering densities, very cautiously. I don't want to see us compromise this big opportunity that we have in West County. This is something that we will probably never ever see again, the opportunity to build a really interesting, thriving, cool destination up here. And so I'm in favor of having a lot of new neighbors, having a lot of new density, having a lot of cool retail and destinations. The ways that you really do support retail, especially retail in a walkable environment, is by having people living around it. And so I'm very much in favor of having big, dense, development here at this site. I should also say that I'm speaking for myself, not under any sort of official professional capacity. That's about it. One of the things too that feels like sometimes afterthoughts on this is the idea of parks, green space, connected areas, bikeways, and then transit connections. I know these are things that the TAC and the vision is going, and the visioning process is going to get to later. But I really do think that we need to be keeping this all in mind. If this area wants to support having a lot of new residents and new retail and making it a destination that people want to actually come to and spend a long day at, we need to be also thinking about connectivity, biking, and getting there and getting to other places on transit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Corey. And next we have Ethan Magaña. So I'll go ahead and allow you to talk, and you could start your comments when you're ready.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Ethan Magaña. We are the Hilltop Plaza. We've been there for 40 years. There's 2 buildings. We used to have 4 buildings in line. We only have 2 now. The retail store is known as Hilltop Plaza on Hilltop Mall Road. It's been so very difficult over the years trying to attract businesses over in that area, but have been trying, and we're still trying, and we're there, and we do not condone any reductions in density. However, You need to consider situations where you don't be oversold on mixed use, and affordable housing coming in is going to solve all these issues. There's so much housing available elsewhere in Richmond, and there's so much warehousing elsewhere in Richmond that you definitely don't need any more industrial and warehouse here. It's not that we don't want it to be there. We think that it's going to be a failure in the future because it's going to compete with all this available space that it's available and vacant all over the place in Pinole, the county, in Richmond, and what have you. So I would bring to your attention an example. Some years ago, like 15, 20 years ago, there was a similar situation where we had problems where the retail environment could not sustain itself. And some of the buildings further down from us on Hilltop Road, across from the mall, they were torn down and were built. And we now have there very successfully dense for sale housing. These neighbors there, they're people that are very, very important demographics. We need to have more of those people if possible. These people have been very stable. Their people are contributing to the community, to the neighborhood, to the retail environment, to the safety that is around. Safety, I mean, we've been struggling with safety. Nobody wants to come there. We're calling the police for a situation, and they're asking us to board up the places, for crying aloud. It's just the wrong attitude that people have, unfortunately. I don't blame them for that, but people don't really understand what is going on, what people have to go through for 40 years. We're still there. We're trying, and please pay attention to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. And next up, we have Bhavin Khatri.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, good evening. My name is Bhavin Khatri. I'm the president of the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council. I'm also the president of the Summer Lane HOA, which is the only residential development across from the Hilltop Mall. And when I say this, I'm not just speaking on my behalf, I'm also speaking on behalf of Hilltop District Neighborhood Council, based on the various feedback we've seen. I'm also part of the advisory committee as well. And I attended both of the public workshop that was hosted by City of Richmond. I am actually in favor of reducing the density. We don't need enormous amount of housing in this area. We already have several residential neighborhoods, and we don't have anywhere place to go to dine, shop, entertain ourselves. So number one focus should be to add more retail, entertainment, and even open space and parks in this development, as opposed to a tremendous amount of high density housing. Because if you just simply add more housing to the area, you're just multiplying the problem. Those same people will have to go out of city, out of county, to Walnut Creek, Berkeley, and other places to shop, dine, and entertain themselves. So we really need a development in this area, and we really want to see something happen in a short term, but I don't think a tremendous amount of housing. Now, I do agree we need housing, and we need a good amount of housing, but the plan that I've seen, at least from the new developer at the mall, proposes like 80 to 90% housing on that site. Now, I do agree with the sort of housing density to be increased on certain parcel of the study area, possibly outside of the mall area. I think that's where it would be. A high density housing like that really makes sense near a great transit center such as BART or things of that nature. We don't have that, and I do agree that we do need to have a elaborate transit center here, and AC Transit has been part of the advisory committee as well on their own board, but I really want us to think about a elaborate transit center, especially if we're going to sort of pitch for high-density housing. And then the other thing I want to say is that we should definitely take into account on what developer wants. Because outside of just the Hilltop Mall area and Prologis and Signature Group, there isn't any other application or even a remote close plans to do anything on any other side. So we don't make sure that this Hilltop Horizon plan comes up with something that's realistic and that can happen in 5 to 10 years. The last thing we want is developer to walk away and the area, the Hilltop Mall side just sits there idly. So thank you, and my 5 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khatri. And I think that wraps up our virtual speakers. We do have one in-person speaker here tonight, Don Gosney, if you can walk up to the podium, and you'll have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you very much. I think it's
Do you have your mic on?
there we go. It keeps turning itself off. Now hit the shift button.
Which seat is it?
The name of the spot.
The green or?
Sorry, Don.
It's all right. I'm used to being silenced.
No, we just
Accidentally.
want to make sure you project.
This one here. And you can press the button one more time. Okay, press it again.
There we go. All right, thank you very much. First, I appreciate the hard work that you're going to be doing on this. It's not enviable, that's for sure. One thing I want to emphasize is that this is not a Hilltop issue. Okay, this is a regional issue from all the way from Albany to Hercules. It's going to affect people, whether they're living, whether they're recreating, whether they're shopping or working there. And so I appreciate the fact that all of my good friends up in the Hilltop area have been weighing in on everything that they want to see happen at this site. It goes beyond that. I don't live up there. But I mean, well, right now, for instance, I don't live anywhere near the Fitzgerald Avenue shopping area in Pinole, except I seem to live there half the time with all the shopping I do there. Same thing, if we do something at Hilltop, I'll be shopping there. So we need to do something that is going to affect and benefit everybody in this area. And I also appreciate the wish lists that everybody has been having about recreating, whether they have soccer fields or parks or something like that. But one thing I believe that we need to make sure that we bring something in that's going to bring in jobs, bring in tax revenue, have some place to actually go shop, some place to actually go work. We have to have a balance between the recreation and the benefits to the community itself. And here's a little hint for a lot of people. When you bring out your checkbook and you write a check for $120 million, you can decide what happens to the property. But that's not happening here. We've had elected officials come right out and flat say they will choose what's going to be built there. They will decide who's going to work there. They will decide what kind of products are going to be sold there. They will decide. This is everything on there. But I never saw their checkbook. If as a homeowner, should we have our own neighbors come in there and say, no, we're not going to allow you to do this or do that with your development of your property? Yeah, you want to add on a man cave in the back of your house? No, we're not going to allow that because we want you to do this to your house instead. No, we wouldn't allow for that. So why are we going to be allowing this for the development of this jewel of our area? Because right now, we don't have jobs in Richmond. We don't have places to shop. And at the same time, we don't have places to recreate. But we need to have a balance because that's the key to the success for all these kinds of projects, a balance. So I hope you keep that in mind. I hope the city keeps that in mind. And yes, we need more housing out there, but at what cost? Because once you build it, you're not going to get a whole lot of work out of that. You're not going to get a whole lot of tax revenue aside from property taxes. It's never enough on that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Don. And I believe that wraps up our public speaker. Oh, great. We have one more coming in.
I don't have my glasses on. Let me know when I'm ready.
And if you could state your name and
Sure.
residents?
My name is Cherise Sharp. I live in the Summer Lane community, right across from the mall. I was curious, I do have one question about the market analysis. I did not see how that data was put together and the territory and area that was used for input for that. I did have a comment about the outskirt areas. I think that that would be a good place for a higher density. I believe that those businesses that are on the outskirts there, they haven't received the walking traffic. And I don't know if those buildings would agree to having some high-density residential above that space. In terms of the main area where the mall is, I'd rather see, the single-family homes, possibly, some duplexes and some townhomes, but nothing as small as was communicated in one of the last meetings where they said something like 600 square feet. I don't know if that's a Signature doing that design there, if they've already made the agreement and agreed to go that small. I think that it should be primarily for families. In terms of park space, I believe that the park space don't have too many scattered, smaller parks, just have one, a larger area. I don't think that there's enough space there to do anything large like soccer fields, and people were saying football fields and things like that. I definitely was actually against adding another grocery store, only because there are several grocery stores within a couple miles. There are Lucky's, there's a Rayleigh's, there's Safeway. I know that's driving, it's not walkable, but walkability in terms of being able to get small things, you can do that at Walmart, you can do that, sort of at the gas station there. I do like the idea of keeping things boutique. And when I say that, I don't want to see the Hilltop area become like a, Richmond inner city type of feel, because the Hilltop area has been one of the most unique master plans and what I consider to be one of the best master plans that I've seen anywhere. In terms of affordable housing, I really don't know where people are going with that. Richmond is the most, affordable place to live in the Bay Area. You just can't get 18 miles from San Francisco, and I know that we don't have the big jobs, but we're not dealing with a lot of space. What I would love to see was something like in terms of I don't know if you consider this warehouse retail, like a living spaces. One of those popular large furniture stores. I mean, we've seen what they're doing over there on Fitzgerald, and it's been very successful. They have some boutique restaurants there. You've got the Ulta and things like that have moved in that area that seem to be doing very successful. But I would like to see that. I don't want to see some other warehousing when we do have Amazon, which is not far away.
10 more seconds to wrap up?
Oh, am I out of my time? Sorry, I didn't peek. Okay, but that's pretty much the core. I can email and provide feedback later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I believe with that was our last public and virtual speaker. If you could come up to the podium and fill out a card. Looks like we have one more coming up. And for anybody else out in the audience, if you would like to speak, please come up to the podium and fill out a speaker form. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Gilmetti. I'm president of Signature Development Group, and we are partnering with Prologis to try and envision again with city and stakeholders a vision for the redevelopment of Hilltop Mall. I just wanted to introduce myself just to say hello. As stated, I think staff and consultant base, the city consultants did a great job explaining background, but Prologis bought the site a couple of years ago, immediately went and started chatting with the community, starting discourse with stakeholder groups, city staff, and others, listened, and when it became apparent that the vision for the site was probably a broader mixed-use element, partnered with us several months ago. We've been doing the same thing, listening to community groups, going to these meetings and sessions. The staff has been hosting and actually on our own as well. And I think we're in concurrence with this notion of a broader use. with densities that kind of resonate with the community, with retail and entertainment type uses, open space. We have to, figure out what the balance on all that is, and we also are very encouraged with this notion of doing it in a time frame that is economically feasible in a near-term environment. The mall has seen better days in terms of its physical condition and past uses, and we would like to, be participatory with the city and citizens in the next generation of what that may look like. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time tonight, and thanks to city staff and the consultant base.
Head of Signature Development.
All right, and one more time for public speakers. It looks like we're wrapped up on that end, and I also do not see members of the public joining online with their raised hands, Commissioner, Chair Tucker. So back over to you.
Great, thank you. All right, so I guess we'll again entertain the conversations with my fellow commissioners. Let's see, I think last time I started, I went to my left, so I think.
Okay, then they group whatever the staff says, and that's what they.
Somebody's mic is still open?
Thank you. Chair Tucker?
Yes.
I have some questions, so I don't know if we're going into stating opinions here, but before we did that, I'd like to at least ask.
So let's break this into questions and then get those out of the way, and then we'll get into feedback.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, well, since you've already got your, I'll just reverse myself since your
Okay.
mic is already hot. Why don't you go with your questions?
I guess my first question is about the process tonight. So you're looking for individual opinions from commissioners, and we're not making a motion or making any formal motion at all. So you're wanting input from us on these topics as commissioners, but not as a group.
Both could be true. You could offer individual comments, and certainly if there's something that resonates with your peers, it could be collective feedback as well.
Okay. A couple of questions about the project. So one question I have is the housing element and what the housing element calls for on this site. Do you know how many units or what kind of density the housing element is looking to achieve on the site?
So for the six-cycle housing element, this Hilltop Mall site is not included in the vacant sites and underutilized sites survey. So we did not assume development on this site. However, moving forward, depending on the rate of housing production throughout the city, if we don't see production in other places, certainly this is a huge opportunity area that could help us contribute to the housing production numbers that we're targeted for.
Okay. I had there were a couple of speakers that that either live or represent Summer Lane, is it? That's a project across from, is that the, do you know, is that the townhomes that are right across the street? So that seems like a nice project. It seems like a pretty appropriate density for the kind of development that I would see there. And I'm just wondering if anybody knows what the density of Summer Lane is.
I'll defer to Lena.
We can confirm that for you, Commissioner Brubaker, but I want to say it was in the high 20s dwelling units per acre. So it's probably between 20 and 30.
Great, thanks. Okay, I guess those were my main questions, and then I'll have some opinions later.
All right, Commissioner Harrison, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of background questions as well, and then we can move on. I'm not as familiar with this area as some who have lived there a while. That big green open space area to the, I think it's the east side of the mall, which looks like it has chaparral or something on it. Why is that? Is that dedicated as open space or something? Because it's not included in any of the plans. and it's like, it has the best freeway visibility of any of this, so I'm wondering why it's not included. Is it because it's dedicated open space?
Well, it's privately owned. You're talking about just south of the Century Theaters?
Basically, I think it's due east or to the right of the mall.
Okay. So I think just south of the Century Movie Theaters, north of Garrity Way, it's a very steep ravine, so it's actually not publicly accessible. And so it's not included because it's likely unable to be developed. And so I believe it's more of a drainage ditch, very steep ravine between, and it is owned by the property owner that owns the movie theater.
Okay, thanks. That seemed odd to me, so I appreciate the clarification. What sort of analysis was done of the importance of freeway visibility to any retail that goes in here? Was there a specific analysis that done?
We haven't done that level of analysis yet. I mean, certainly those driving on Interstate 80, obviously you can see the Macy's building very visible. We have still maintained, even though we've torn down the freeway sign that used to identify Hilltop Mall, or just the Hilltop District, we still maintain that easement. So potentially, depending on what the long-term use, if it is a large commercial development, but we have not studied.
That's too much detail for the stage
at this point, but I don't know, Woody, is that something that the Site Lab team has been looking at? I know you've been looking at the topography, but visibility from the freeway?
Yeah, we were considering that in the context of topography, but I don't know that I have any specific findings to the commissioner's question, or that we've gone into enough detail to give you specific answers. I think what you see in some of the initial alternatives that were put on the screen is that we were trying to bias retail kind of to the eastern side of the mall site, as well as the employment, kind of making assumptions around that.
Okay, great. And then one last clarification is, we were talking about looking at like destination retail, like a manufactured downtown, that concept, mixed use. Yeah, we've got many acres here. Has anybody looked at what level of housing needs to be added in the area to actually create the population level that's going to be needed to make that work? If this big mall didn't work with all the houses that are around it now, why would a downtown retail approach work now when something that's 5 times its size didn't? Because I'm just wondering, is anybody really looking at what it's really going to take for immediate population? Because this walkable downtown thing, you're basically looking at the population within a mile of the destination, and that really is something that you really should be looking at as you're sort of coming up with some concepts. Otherwise, it's just kind of colors on a map.
That's a great point. I'm wondering if Bev or Stephanie, if you could chime in terms of the market study, the near long-term sort of development timeline, if that was something that we were taking into account in terms of the long-term viability of commercial up there, the housing density.
Sure, thank you, Hector. I can probably start and have Stephanie add to the points. And within the presentation, we started to provide some of those high-level findings from the analysis, which pointed to the potential for certain types of uses dependent on if there's some sort of critical mass. And therefore, you saw some of the recommendations made come through in the presentation. And Stephanie, if you want to touch on any specifics related to uses, given that we evaluated a number of them and determined kind of the feasibility of those uses.
Thanks, Bev, and thanks for the question. Stephanie Hager, BAE Urban Economics. So I guess I'd start by saying there's no sort of concrete formula that we can give you to tell you how many people you need within a certain radius to support X number of square feet of new retail. It does seem from what we found in the market study that having additional retail, or sorry, having additional residents in the area will, is sort of a necessary component of supporting the type of retail development that people are wanting to see there. And sort of in turn, seeing some additional residential development seeing some additional retail development will help market support for additional residential development. So it's a little bit of a, hoping to see some incremental change where you can start with some retail, start with some residential that will help to attract some retail, which will help to attract additional residential, and you can get some sort of activity there that builds on itself. I would say one thing that would make this different from the mall in terms of the market support for retail in the mall format versus in, say, a more walkable format is just that the sort of concept of going to a regional mall is not, sort of something that has diminished significantly over the past, I'd say, couple of decades. So this would be looking at retail in a new format that's more attractive to the type of environment that shoppers prefer to go to these days. Something that's a little bit more walkable, a little bit more sort of restaurants and other things that are a little bit different from what you would get in a mall format. So from a market perspective, thinking about the type of retail being sort of a different type of retail from what you have there at the mall would be better from a market support perspective in terms of what people are looking for when they're looking to spend their retail dollars.
All right, thanks. I just had a couple of questions. I got a couple of questions, and one in line with Commissioner Harrison on the market study, because you just raised the question for me in terms of when you looked at the market study, did you also look at the income level of individuals who will be living in that area to support that walkable space, if you will? Because if I just heard correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, it was just mentioned that it was, it's a defined community that's going to support the walkable space. Well, then who's going to be living there? And so I'm assuming there had to be some type of analysis in terms of the type of income that would be required to make sure that these are viable and there's long-standing businesses. So,
Stephanie, if you can address that one, and also if you might want to speak a little slower and a little bit more clearly. I know the sound came muffled on our side, so we were having a hard time tracking.
Sorry about that. I'll try and scoot in a little bit too. So yeah, in terms of income, we did find that for some uses, particularly regional entertainment uses, which have been part of the discussion, a lot of those uses really seek out areas where the incomes would be generally higher than what we see, in the Hilltop area at the moment. Precisely what those incomes would need to be is, again, there's not a specific formula for what income levels those households need to achieve in order to support retail. Households of all different kinds of income levels are supporting retail, and
froze and then dropped.
It's like we have, there we go. She's back. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Looks like we froze for a second. Okay, so we'd be looking at draws from both the region and from the local community. So there's a little bit of a mix of support from residents in the area and residents from the broader region. So I think there would be a need to have some higher income households in the area to help support retail spending, but having that mixed with some affordable units would still help to support some retail spending, in a new retail development.
Okay, thank you. I think that kind of goes to Mr. Gosney's regional approach. The money here just can't support it, or won't be able to support it on its own. Then I just have a process question. I know it came up when a while back when the study sessions were being prepared, and there was a couple of questions by a few of the commissioners regarding the notifications to the residents in and around the site. And just wanted to confirm that, because there was also sensitivity to language, ensure that the notifications were going out in the appropriate languages in the communities. I just wanted to confirm that that was the case, because in terms of looking at some of the study information, the number of people who actually showed up, and well, I can't necessarily say by name, but I don't know if there's any way that shows the ethnic breakdown of who actually was in those study sessions.
I'm not sure that we actually tracked the ethnic or demographic makeup of the folks that attended the workshops. I do know that there were some demographical questions about, you know, where people live, whether they work here, have businesses here, and so maybe Bev can jump in on that end and provide that information. As far as notification is concerned for the study session, we did notify everybody within 500 feet of the project plan boundary. So that did go out. I know we got a comment from Commissioner Agarwal saying she did not receive a notification, but it sounds like she was outside that 500-foot range. And certainly we could adjust the range as needed moving forward to collect additional feedback.
Yes, I would suggest that the radius be extended, because I mean, 500 feet is not that far. I mean, it gets Summer Lane, but when you go across the street and you get to going toward the college, you know, those communities have been around for quite some time as well, and I'm sure they have an interest, especially when we're looking at potential traffic impacts, which is not a part of tonight's discussion, but I would assume that we would open up that radius to get more voices. Okay, so those, any other questions that might have popped up since? Okay, so how about then, Commissioner Harrison, we'll start with you in terms of comments.
All right, thank you. Just an overall comment on the timeline. Getting anything done in 5 years is very optimistic. I've been thinking you really should be planning for what can you get done in 10 years, because a big area like that, which you're trying to completely redevelop or re-engineer, et cetera, it's a major undertaking, even though you're going to be doing it in pieces. It's going to take a while, so I don't think you should be planning on too much happening in 1 to 5 years. Maybe 6 to 10 is really where you're going to start seeing coming out of the ground. It'd be my thoughts on a timeline, and for what that's worth. I think the way it's laid out with the employment activity coming first, that's fine. That makes sense to me. But as I was getting at earlier, you've got to, if it isn't combined with the housing that's going to support it, whether it's the employment stuff like the retail, not retail, but the research and development or the warehousing distribution, if you don't have some housing going along, I think it's going to not have the ultimate goal you want of a mixed-use result. So you had two different timelines, one for residential and one for housing in the presentation, and it might be good to kind of look at those together as you move forward with it, so you can really make sure you're getting the kinds of housing that would be desirable as different uses are coming on board. On the retail stuff, I'm glad that it was recognized that the Walmart is there, and now that they've decided they're going to stay, I mean, that really kind of drives the planning for retail. I think the concept, I believe it's one of the concepts from the city that has retail, or no, it's the land use owner's concept where they're suggesting like 9 acres of retail to the right around the Walmart. I think that makes sense in terms of way to approach the retail development there. That gives you almost enough land to create a downtown concept. I mean, these are really small acreages when you think about you're trying to build a community. But that that concept for me of where the retail makes most sense is that, I guess I'll call that the south east side of the property. One thought I had is that as that comes about, ideally at some point, those who are developing the new retail and the idea of a downtown concept for that would be able to work with Walmart to change the Walmart parking field into a parking structure that would serve both facilities. That's maybe 20 years out, but if it isn't planned for a parking structure in the long term, you may not be able to squish it in later on. And that would, having a parking field never really supports the downtown, walkable downtown concept very well at all. So that would be something, again, that's phase 3 or 4 of the project, but it's something I think might want to be recognized as your consultants are thinking about it. How are they going to ultimately reconfigure that whole thing so it works as a unit as opposed to two separate retail activities? One of the things that might help work with that too is the open space concept that's in the consultant's plan, which kind of has a north-south stretch to it. That would, I think, be helpful in connecting through the project so you're not just arriving at these locations by your car, but you can actually walk there. So I think, that, say, coming between where the Walmart is and where the future retail is might make sense as a way of getting some of the open space people want to see, yet it's also active open space that people can use to get to the downtown, get to the restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be a concept I would see being desirable. I really think I like the idea of research and development and advanced manufacturing component, but as you're looking at that in greater detail, you might want to look at incubator spaces as opposed to the big buildings that we were seeing in the presentations. Those big buildings are, I would think, something that one company might do as opposed to innovative groups. We want to get innovators to come to Richmond and start their product, whatever it might be. You might want to think a portion of that being some incubator spaces. I know where I was before, they had a lot of that. And it seemed to really drive some different kinds of new activities. Going back to the retail, there's a place in Southern California. I'm most familiar with Southern California. I don't know if you're familiar with Victoria Gardens. It's in Rancho Cucamonga, but it's developed with the idea of streets in it. It's an outdoor mall, so instead of being enclosed, and they've done a very nice job, and they've got parking and theaters and restaurants, big, they've got Macy's type stores as well as little ones. So you might want to look at that as giving you some ideas of what you're trying to accomplish. I think the idea of distribution centers probably makes sense in an early phase because that's probably what there's a demand for right now. I don't think you've got much of a demand for the other land uses, but if you go forward with that to begin with, you've really got to work with the developer that they confine it to the space that they're indicating. And as I was looking at that amount of space, that's not a lot of space for warehouse distribution development. Where I was before, the warehouses themselves were 1 million square feet. So I'm not sure what kind of distribution centers you'd really be able to squeeze into little spaces like that. So you might want to get a little bit into the weeds on that with them to make sure what you're laying out there is going to actually be functional. And I think I've covered it all. Those are kind of my thoughts. Housing, I think your density, the lower density, if that housing project on the west side is actually 20 units per acre, I mean, if you go up to 40 maybe at some point, but I don't think you want to go much above that in this area. And I really would discourage any kind of single family development. You just eat up your land and you'll have not achieved your goal. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Harrison. Commissioner Brubaker.
Thank you for those comments. Those were good. Could I see the list of questions on the screen? Cheat sheet. One thought I had in looking at these questions in the presentation, there was very little mention of transportation, and I've always felt that land use and transportation are inextricably linked. So I don't know if there is a chance for additional or better transit to this area. What kind of transit? I would think that that would influence some of the land use planning that we're doing here. And so I would like to have the transportation discussion threaded into the planning of the site. I would hope that we could get good transit here. It's going to be critical to making a viable, walkable environment. I've heard the rule of thumb of a minimum of 30 units to the acre as supporting high quality transit. But I do feel like one of the reasons to try to get a floor on the housing density is to support good transit to the area. So I would encourage you to look at that. The other thing I would say that's not really, I know that Woody had mentioned some things about how to put the site together and make it a good place. I really do feel like there needs to be a lot of focus on wherever this Main Street or, retail environment ends up being, it needs to be a super great place that people want to visit and want to hang out in, and it probably needs to be pretty accessible to not only the people who live here, but people who come from elsewhere, whether on transit or by car. So it should be pretty accessible. And given that it looks like Walmart is there to stay, it probably needs to somehow be integrated or next to, adjacent to, and consider that environment for Walmart when thinking about this and kind of linking them together in some way. And I'll leave it to Site Lab to do that because it's a hard problem. But and keeping in mind that Walmart will not be there forever probably, or even if they are, they'll probably start thinking of different formats in the future anyways. So I think whatever plan we have should be flexible regarding that Walmart site. And now I'll go through the questions. Timeline, I don't really have a strong opinion about this. I have heard the community say they want to see something happen quickly. I feel like personally, I feel like it's better to be good than quick. But I understand the desire to have something happen there right away. So I am totally open to that. Employment use, something, I would state that I would not want to see logistics use here with truck traffic. I think there's lots of logistics use in Richmond that already bring an environmental burden, so I would not want to see more here, and I would not support that. Some of the other uses include a data center, and I don't really know about that. I guess it just means like kind of drawing a line and saying nothing's happening there because the building won't have any people in it. It'll do something, maybe it'll make money for someone, and if it helps the development, I guess it's okay, but I would rather see a use where you might get some daytime foot traffic supporting this great main street that we've created there. So R&D sounds like a good use to me. Office sounds like a good use to me. I've already mentioned retail. It's really important that it be retail that draws people to the area and is pedestrian oriented. Regarding housing, I would support a reduction. I think there probably is there definitely is a place for a townhouse kind of density at Hilltop. Regarding a lower density than that, I know the developer wants to see that and is going to want to see that and make a hard, attempt to get that to happen because that's what's marketable right now. We've seen that in other projects in Richmond. I'm kind of on the fence about that. I'd rather not to see single-family residential, but if it has to happen to make something else happen, I would say that's okay. But I really think the focus should be on more of a middle-scale housing of townhomes and, you know, 4-story. And especially, and I believe the site could be zoned so that there's some areas of lower density and some area that requires a higher density. Would I support an increase to the density maximum? It goes up to 135 right now, right? Oh, and are you talking about the commercial zone? Commercial zone. Yes, I think housing, I think mixed use in the commercial zone, the CR zone is appropriate. I think the CR zone, I mean, I feel like they're underutilized uses right now, and something should happen there. And I think whatever happens there should face the street. They're all set back behind parking lots, whatever happens. So there's some urban design things to take care of in the CR zone. And with that, I'll say one more thing, which is I did a review of scale, and I saw that the entire city of Siena, Italy, within the walls, will fit in the Hilltop site. And Siena, Italy has one of the greatest public spaces in the world, and people fly from all over to go there. So I'm not going to say that we're going to do Siena here, but I do feel like we should have an ambition for this site. And the other thing I'll say, which is related to that, which is that this is a hilltop. So what they did in Italy was build hill towns. And so maybe this could go from Hilltop Mall to be a hill town. And I would appreciate that. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Commissioner, for those comments. So let me just go through tick off my list real quick, several which have already been mentioned by my fellow commissioners. One of the ones, though, that did catch my interest, though, was the integration of Walmart and how that's going. And it's more of, I think as Commissioner Burek said, what is the vision for this area? And, you know, I'm trying to be careful here. We're trying to reimagine the Hilltop community and meld in the existing with the new. And we want to make sure that folks come from all over to the space and they feel as though they are experiencing a value proposition when they come to the Hilltop area, whether it's in housing, whether it's in retail, whether it's in walkable space, whether it's in hanging out in the park, and so forth. And so how Walmart plays in that discussion will be critical in terms of how folks continue to view the Hilltop area. In terms of the workforce development site, and I'll go out of order on the list, but it was just mentioned in terms of, you know, data centers and so forth. Big box training centers, call centers, while they are desirable opportunities to bring in jobs, the question is always, what are the salaries that are being paid in these type of settings? And so, again, you know, we want to elevate the opportunities for Richmond residents. We also want to make sure that they are good paying jobs and so forth. So I would want to make sure that whatever use from a employment perspective is not just to put a building on a plot of land and throw up some cubicles, but that there are actually some jobs that Richmond residents, as well as those from the neighboring cities, can actually thrive off of. In terms of transit, I know that is not a part of this discussion, but I would echo Commissioner Brubaker's comments. You know, especially when we're talking about density and high density, the transit issue is already, it's already chaotic when folks are jumping off 80 to go to a parkway because 80's backed up, or they're traversing through off of Hilltop just to get around and so forth. And so if we don't have a transit map to show where and how folks are going to be going through the community and through the neighborhoods, especially the existing ones, I think we would be shortchanging ourselves and having a design that then, it's not an etch-a-sketch. Once we design it, it gets down, you can't erase it. We're going to be stuck with it. So let's make sure that we are truly looking at the design elements of transit to and through this community. In terms of walkability, I know that's been something that is always brought up when we've been talking about some of the housing elements, whether it's Hilltop, whether it's Point Mulati, whether it's Campus Bay. So my question is, when we're looking at the design, City of Richmond, I know several years ago, looked at a climate action plan. And so I would want to make sure that the elements of the climate action plan meet the elements of this design. When we're talking about reduction of greenhouse gas emission, when we're talking about power consumption, when we're talking about waste use and so forth. So however that element gets overlaid in the discussion, we need to make sure we look at not only just the general plan, but also our climate action plan, because there's some specific timelines for meeting some reductions, and that should be in here somewhere. Let's see. Family friendly. I mean, I think on some of the elements of here, whether it's high density, low density, it's got to be a family friendly area. One of the areas of, we have a school system that continues to, we shorter schools because we don't have families in the community anymore. But yet in this Hilltop area, we have, 3 charter schools just in the immediate area. And yet the public school continues to, lag behind. And so, again, want to make sure that we are continuing to feed our existing communities and resources. And so as we look at how this is designed, and yes, I'm not necessarily single-family dwellings eat up a lot of space and consume a lot of resources, but we need to have some type of opportunities for young families, especially for City of Richmond. We talk about affordability. Richmond being affordable, well, Richmond can be affordable to new families and grow our economy in that way. And so I would want to make sure that in the discussions, how we look at the design, which again goes into the open space, which goes into retail, which goes into grocery stores and so forth. What I also didn't hear when I say family friendly, I'm going to go to the opposite end. Hilltop is is an older community, and so we also got to make sure that there's senior amenities in this space. Not everyone drives, and so we want to make sure that if they can get to a store, if they can get their housing needs met, that it is in a way that they do not have to rely on always someone taking them or public transportation, because public transportation also is not necessarily adequate in this space. And so we want to make sure that senior amenities are part of the discussion. And I think that's when we look at the radius from the 500-foot center, you got to go down the hill, because that's where a lot of seniors and our older communities live. And let's see. I think that might have been all. If you want to put the slide back up with all the different questions, and then I think I can wrap my comments up. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Yes, and so in terms of I think we've all agree in terms of the density meeting the needs of whatever the density needs to be to support the other retail establishment, the business establishments in the area. And I'm sure we will have that discussion, as this thing progresses, but it needs to be a part of the initial conversations. And I think in terms of just the type of retail, what style of new retail development most desirable, that's going to be, I think, because we're looking at a time frame from 0 to 5, I think we're looking at the 5 to 10 horizon. And so, whether it's boutique type of retail establishment, whether it's going to be, retail chain, whether it's just a distribution center of some type of retail, I think it's, for me, it's still somewhat premature to kind of identify what's still around, that's going to be around in the next 5 to 10 years. But I do believe that there needs to be, in terms of the horizon for the timeline, it's a 5 to 10 year window, not 0 to 5. I agree with Commissioner Brubaker that rather be good than quick. And right now, things are just changing so rapidly that to try to put a stamp on one type of use, one type of space will be just a little bit, be a challenge. And I think the next commissioner, the next commission seated up here will be weighing in, and we'll probably have some different views. And so we want to make sure we accommodate for that. So I think that's pretty much all what I have in terms of comments. I don't know if any commissioner have anything else to add based on that.
Yes, and through the chair, I would want to point out two wonderful, excellent comments, and I'll provide an opportunity for the consultant team to see if we want to dig in further on any comments or questions. But I did want to say that this is going to be an iterative process over the next year. So right now we're sort of, setting forth the vision, sort of what do we want on the map, what are the colors, where do they go. We have begun this process with transportation in mind, and obviously on our bench of consultants, we have sort of the nationally recognized leaders in those practice areas, Fair and Pierce, for example, that deal with all sorts of mobility options, including active transportation. So we have that, and right now I think what we're doing is setting up the scaffolding, the framework for this plan area, and then really what's going to come next after we sort of set the framework is to really put some flesh on that framework, and that will include the circulation map or the element, and other policies such as equity policies, affordability in there. So in the next iteration or wave, you'll see more specificity in the land use map, and as we dive deeper into the planning document, you'll have the opportunity to review the draft document, which will speak more specifically to those areas of concern. So Bev, with that, I wanted to sort of offer you an opportunity to see if there's anything that you wanted to follow up with the commission.
Thank you, Hector. Appreciate the opportunity, and also echo what Hector shared in that the feedback has been really great, and appreciate the input that was provided beyond the study session questions, and the feedback shared really does resonate with what we've heard in terms of the emphasis on open space and transit, walkability. And so those are things that will be woven throughout the plan. And so those were certainly the highlights that we had mentioned within the presentation, and really those kind of backbone features within the plan that we hope to integrate within this preferred vision that we're working towards. And Woody and Stephanie, I don't know if there's anything else that you might have to add. Seeing a head shake from Woody, no from Stephanie, but yeah, thank you both. Thank you, Hector. Thank you, Commission.
Thank you, Bev.
If I can jump in real quick, because I know I wrote myself a note that we did have Commissioner Agrawal, who is not present this evening, did submit a letter to the staff and the commissioners for the record for this evening. And so I'll just turn over to staff to maybe summarize what her comments were.
Thank you, Chair Tucker. Yeah, so we did receive an email comment on November 13th, Monday, prior to this study session from Commissioner Agrawal. She has 3 points that she wanted to, make sure the commission and the public were aware about. First being notification. I did mention earlier that she and others that she represents live sort of outside of the mailing boundary that we use, the 500 feet. Certainly, we've heard from the commission that we should take a look at expanding that notification area. But I would like to point out that the city standard notification radius for all projects is 300 feet, so we did sort of bake that in, hopefully in the next iteration to a greater extent. There was also a second point with regards to map clarity. Commissioner Agarwal wanted to sort of see the street names that were proposed. They weren't visible in the plan. And in response to that, I would say that, again, we're really still at the 10,000 feet level here. We're going to be in the next iteration getting finer grained, and eventually when development does come under the specific plan, we'll have street names and more specificity to what the streets are going to be called and where those are going to be located. Lastly, she was mentioning that she is strongly opposed to any industrial in this area. And she is looking to have the city, do more extensive feedback or outreach into the community so that we could hear greater volume of voices for the Hilltop area. So I think that summarizes all her comments. And we certainly have her comment letter here that we'll keep on record.
Thank you. So, there's no motion, there's nothing to vote on tonight. So again, thank you, staff, and those who've been working on this project for quite some time. And I know we're still a lot of ways to go, but it looks like it's shaping up to be something that we can all be proud of. And we look forward to the next set of discussions that take in the commissioners' comments woven into it. So, thank you. Anything else? All right. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is reports of officers, commissioner, and staff. I just asked staff if there's any reports you wish to share with us.
Nothing in particular, Chair Tucker. I was remiss in mentioning for the previous item that, we're looking to have a study session with the City Council December 5th, and we'll sort of have the same discussion with them. For those that are watching online, we do have a project website at hilltophorizon.com. And everybody could keep abreast of the project timeline there. And there's a lot of detailed information that's available as far as the public input that has been made thus far. Obviously, we have a new commissioner. We welcome the opportunity to work with Commissioner He, and hopefully we'll be able to get his comments on other items. With that, I'll defer over to Community Development Director Velasco and see if she has any announcements.
Thank you, Hector, and commissioners. Good evening. I want to put in a plug-in. We currently are recruiting for senior planners. So anybody interested can go to NeoGov and look up for Richmond. Also from our HR webpage, we are currently doing a recruitment. And we hope to staff up. It's been very challenging recently, and just want to appreciate all our current staff who are handling a lot of requests. ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are very high in demand, and so we did recently also hire and are kicking off a $35 million transformative climate communities grant. So we did hire a project coordinator. That project will be run out of community development in partnerships with community organizations as well as other city departments. So we're really excited, and we'll be sharing information both to the commission and the council, sort of building climate resiliency in the Iron Triangle, Santa Fe, and Coronado neighborhoods. So we're really excited to do a public kickoff in early 2024. So we'll come back with that information, and just wish you all happy holidays. I know Thanksgiving's next week, and Just thank you for the time and the effort that you put into this board and commission.
I'm just wondering, will there be any meetings over December?
I think
Currently don't have any projects that absolutely need to come to the commission,
I
but
see.
certainly if one presents itself, we'll poll the members and see everybody's availability.
Yeah, I saw that Chevron's held over till January 18th, so that made me wonder, well, are we not meeting in December?
Yeah, but that is a good point. So I'll work with Lena and Iquan to take a look at the calendar, see what could be possibly on the docket, and try to clarify whether we would have a meeting in December fairly early so that you could do, your holiday planning with family.
Yeah, thank you.
That would definitely appreciate it. And then also in line with the plug for the city looking to hire, just always put my plug in that we have a vacancy on the commission. And so if anyone out there is interested in serving on behalf of the city of Richmond, please give the planning commission a consideration. So any other announcements from commissioners? None to my left, none to my right. And if that is the case, then we'll gavel this meeting closed.
Thank you.